the appointment of our next speaker, Rowena Allan, as Victoria's first Gender and Sexuality Commissioner. This is not a job with a long pedigree, as far as I understand. Rowena is a long-standing advocate for LGBTI Victorians. Again, that's not a label or an acronym that would have been familiar to any civilisation until about a second ago. And she's held leadership positions in the community and in government sectors. She's been a member of 3 Victorian government LGBTI ministerial advisory groups, chaired the Ministerial Advisory Committee on LGBTI Health and Wellbeing between 2007 and 2009. She's been many other things, all exemplifications of the transformation that Howard was alluding to, and all things that I'm glad we're going to hear about now. Thank you.
Can I acknowledge that we meet on Aboriginal land and pay my respects to elders past and present and any Aboriginal people that are here with us this afternoon. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. At that time, I like to pay respects to my own elders, the elders of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, gender diverse and intersex community, because, thank you, there wouldn't be a Commissioner in Victoria of Gender and Sexuality without the elders, and particularly in Ida Hobbit Week, which is the world recognition of homophobia, transphobia and biphobia. There wouldn't be a Commissioner in Victoria without the work of the elders that have gone before. Okay, so as Howard said and others, I've been appointed in Victoria first of a type. It's quite good because you don't have any shoes to fill and anything you do is clearly within your work plan. But I was appointed in July, and it was a bit of a roller coaster ride. If anyone has worked in government before, I don't think the Department of Premier and Cabinet were ready for me, or maybe the position, I'm not sure. But I did over 20 pieces of media in the first 12 hours. So clearly it says, sexual identity and gender identity are really very prominent right now. That's about when they sent someone down from HR to see if I needed media training, which I thought was pretty funny. But if you've survived Neil Mitchell and Red Simons, there wasn't really much else I could do. That's a picture of my family. Many people said, well, why, Commissioner, why are you making this so personal? Why are you sharing your own stories and your family life? I think my role as Commissioner is really quite different to the Red Tape Commissioner or the Chief of Police or the Disability Commissioner even, because it is about 10% legislation, 90% education, and I think it's about changing hearts and minds. And we know as queer people, when we tell our stories, when we know people, we get to know people, it does do exactly that. I did hook up with an introvert, so that was a bit of an issue. And when the Age said, can we come to your house in Violet Town and do a whole piece, every job in the house got done, all those jobs you never do, and they took one photo on the porch, but and of course the neighbours thought we were selling, but it was it's really quite important. That's a slide. It's actually what it is an actual definition of the LGBTI acronym. But it's been, as I said, it's been Ida Hobbit Week, and I've been in all sorts of places, and I won't say which local government, but you've got to feel for local government councillors sometimes, don't you, when they get these really long, LGBTI thing. And, the person who wrote this lovely councillor speech gave him the whole sandwich, the LGBTIQPAS. And they put it 4 times in his speech, poor thing, like how... Anyway, so the L is lesbian, women who are attracted to women. G is obviously gay, men who are attracted to men primarily. Bisexuality, this I think is really unknown a lot. People even discriminate within the LGBTI community about bisexuality. And I think we've got a lot to learn from bisexual people. They fall in love with the person and the genitalia is completely irrelevant. I think it's fantastic. Transgender, if you think about gender on a continuum, male to female is what we understand as gender identity in those stereotypes. We are moving to much more of a continuum around gender. Transgender means moving from one binary to the other, so male to female or female to male, but I would consider myself on the binary of gender as well. If you want to be really hip, and I know this crowd, you are really hip, so you move away from the language of transgender and move much more now into trans and gender diverse, okay, and that's more encompassing of everybody. And it's particularly young people. Young people are pushing the language in this space. You can gender fluid, gender neutral, gender non-binary, gender F, which I won't say, all sorts of things. And the language changes all the time. So I'm really glad they didn't make me the Commissioner for LGBTI. So then there's the new language around the polar opposite to transgender, which is cisgender, C-I-S gender. So what's cisgender? Anyone know what cisgender is? Hey, there you go. I'll give you a Freddo Frog if I had one. So cisgender is the polar opposite to transgender. So if you are born, if you're allocated male at birth, you grow up, you think you're a man, you're cisgender. Yeah? So it's the polar opposite to transgender. So you can go home now and say, you know, I'm heterosexual, I'm cisgender, and be really cool, okay? If that's who you are. Then, just to remind people that gender is on a continuum and sexuality is a completely different continuum. So a gay man is cisgender. Given the gender of male at birth, grows up, is very comfortable in his masculinity, but his sexuality is homosexual. Yeah? And the last on the slide that isn't there is intersex. Intersex people are people born with different chromosome, and you know there are different, depending on who you listen to, there's anywhere over 40 different variations of intersex conditions. It's more common than you could imagine. 1 in 100,000 people are born with an intersex variation. So, you know, these are major issues for parents and families of intersex kids, because what do we say when a child is born? Is it a boy or a girl? So, intersex advocates and myself, we say, yes, you need to gender a child. You need to gender a child. What you don't need to do is the invasive, what they call normalising surgery, until that young person grows up. So unfortunately, we've got many intersex adults where, you know, the medical profession and the family have made a decision about gender at birth which doesn't match their gender identity as they grow up. And unfortunately, with that medical intervention, sometimes it's not, it's not reversible. So what we're saying is, yes, gender the child, but, you know, if the child grows up and says, nah, computer says wrong, you got it wrong, then you can, change the gender without as many issues for those people, as young people. So it's been mentioned that Victoria is sort of moving the way in this space. Well, why do we need, to answer Neil Mitchell's question, why do we need a Commissioner for Gender and Sexuality? Unfortunately, we're still overrepresented in mental health issues, in substance abuse, in rates of suicide. And the statistic that gets me out of bed is the bottom one there. 50% of transgender people in their lifetime have tried to commit suicide. That's not just thought about it, that's actually attempted. Thought about taking their life is over 80% before transition and 4% after transition. What's really important, I think, to emphasise here, it's not our sexuality and gender diversity that is the cause of our mental health issues. It's the discrimination that we experience that is the cause of those sorts of statistics. So what have we got in Victoria? We have the first Minister for Equality. He's the Minister for many other useful things as well, Martin Foley, Minister for Housing and Mental Health and the Arts. We have a portfolio in government, myself, and also a whole of government task force. We've had different health and welfare committees within government. The first one we had was back in 2000. It sat in Department of Human Services. It was actually attacked on the back of food and hygiene, and we met in the basement, but we thought we were Christmas. So we've come a long way. We've come a really long way. So we've got a whole of government task force. It sits right there in Department of Premier and Cabinet. The Minister chairs it, which I think says an enormous amount, and it also means that the Deputy Secretaries don't delegate, which is kind of useful as well. A Justice Working Party, which is chaired, again, in a hybrid model between a Member of Parliament and a community member, and also the Health and Human Services is chaired by the Parliamentary Secretary for Health, as well as a community doctor as well. And then I chair the Intersex Reference Group. First time in Victoria we've ever had a group particularly focused on intersex, where we have adults with intersex variation, parents of intersex children, as well as the medical profession working on those issues. Trans and gender diverse reference group. This is really important. We've secured an extra $6 million in Victoria in the last budget for adult transgender services. If you add that to the $6 million in the Royal Children's Hospital in the last government, we now will not only be Australia's leading practitioners and state, we're going to be knocking Amsterdam off in a couple of years in being global world leaders in trans health, which I think is a fantastic legacy of this government. So what do I do on a daily basis when I'm not talking to fabulous groups like yourself? I'm involved in all sorts of things. You will have seen that this year we've just caught up with Western Australia and Tasmania, which is not anything much to brag about, but we do have same-sex adoption in Victoria. Unfortunately, the Minister was quite devastated. We still have religious exemption with that. My role was to work with the 4 adoptive agencies to make sure that no rainbow family is discriminated and there's a referral process. But unfortunately, it's still discrimination, but we have same-sex adoption. We've amended the Relationships Act in Victoria as well. You may have heard a case in South Australia. There was two men who got married in England, where of course it's legal to get married in England, and they came to Adelaide for their honeymoon. Why they came to Adelaide for the honeymoon, that's probably another PowerPoint. But anyway, they did. The tragic story with that is that one of the men fell down a case of stairs and died. And on his death certificate, he was pronounced single. So you've got trauma impounded on trauma there. So, of course, the Minister was straight on the phone. He says, Commissioner, what would happen in Victoria? And I said, exactly the same thing. So now in Victoria, we recognise overseas relationships, and that won't happen in Victoria. Later this year, I can't talk too much about this, but later this year we'll see hopefully some barriers in relation to birth certificates for transgender and intersex people, which was an election commitment, be removed, and that's pretty exciting. And then with the rest of the time, yesterday I was announced on Minister Richardson's whole of government steering committee on family violence. Family violence in our relationships, or our intimate partner relationships, are tracking the same as heterosexual couples. So our relationships are just as mucked up as everybody else's. But our terminology around family violence is just perhaps a little bit broader. So it also includes parents who physically or emotionally attack their children when they come out, or siblings that attack each other for coming out as homosexual or transgender and so on. I sit on the Premier's ICE task force. We don't have a lot of data about lesbian, bisexual and queer women, but we know that homosexual men in Victoria use illicit drugs 15% higher than heterosexual men. And I also sit on the Police Commissioner's Human Rights Advisory Group as well. I'm a big believer that if you're not at the table, you're not at the table. Even with people's good intentions in mind, you need to actually be there for people to remember who you are and what you're doing. And then I also work in all of the intersections where LGBTI people are. So I'm working with the Office of Aboriginal Affairs around Brother Boys and Sister Girls, which is the transgender Aboriginal name for people in that community. I'm also working with the Police Commissioner. He's given me a bus to go around rural Victoria, and we've identified where the first slipper from Priscilla is. And he said to me, Ro, I'm not sure you can have it on the roof of the bus. Maybe you'll need to get a trailer. But anyway, and Dolly Diamond, and we're all going to head off later this year. But it's really important that we make sure that all the work that we're doing in Victoria is in Victoria. And coming from Violet Town, that's really important to me. So multicultural and religious groups. This is a new frontier, I think, in this work. We've secured $500,000 out of the multicultural money itself, and it's been run out of Multicultural Victoria for multicultural LGBTI projects. You know, it's one of those horrifying things where, you send out the invitations and you hope people are coming to your party. Like, I really worried that no multicultural groups would actually apply for the money to work with LGBTI people, but we've been oversubscribed, and so I'm really excited about that, and particularly overwhelmed by the applications from the Muslim community as well as the Jewish community. So we're going to see some great projects coming forward. I'm also working with survivors of gay conversion therapy. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's the concept that religious groups have that you can pray away the gay. So I'm a survivor of gay conversion therapy, so that's worked. But anyway, the organised groups, and we've inherited lovely things from America, that's come out of the States, like groups like Exodus. They've been shut down. The two men that were running Exodus fell in love, got married and apologised to everybody. But all jokes aside, the network, I suppose, has now gone underground. And, you know, as late as just last month, I met with the survivors in a group in Melbourne, and this stuff's really real. And again, as I've said, it's only 10% legislation, 90% education. In Victoria, we're strengthening the powers of the Health Services Commissioner to be able to investigate some of this if it is a practising psychologist or psychiatrist, which is rare. Most of it's in the Bible study, home, church groups, and it's really hard. We've got to keep the conversations going. Now, hands up. I'm going to get you to out yourselves now. Hands up, all the data freaks. Come on, all the data nerds, put your hand up. Look, they're so reluctant. Oh, look, there's more data nerds. I got to say, congratulations. There's more data nerds in this room than many of the rooms I speak to. So congratulations on outing yourself there. I'd rather stick knitting needles in my eyes, but I know how important data is, and we don't have, and you can tell from the presentation, we don't have a lot of data around LGBTI people. So, you know, there is a move to do that, and I have collected all the data nerds in this space that I can think of that have been hounding me about this to make sure that we get some more information. We start collecting data. And even the computer systems that we have within the Victorian Government are not set up to collect anything other than male and female. The new system that's going to come and be rolled out in the next year or so, hopefully, will be able to do that. And so once we get the boxes and the forms right, we'll be well underway. And of course, as I've said, I'm working with local governments, and we're producing a resource called Roads, Rates, Rubbish and Rainbows. So watch that. The City of Bendigo, you've got a little bit to do. Just a little bit to do, just a little bit. So we'll keep going. So aged care. This is an area that I'm also really passionate about because, you know, many of our elders have experienced, you know, enormous amounts of discrimination in their lifetime. And I know stories where, you know, people straighten up, as we call it. They put away their photos of themselves, their family, when home help come to clean their house or do some of those jobs. You know, they feel there's still that sense of shame. There's a picture of me in a digger. They didn't actually let me turn it on, which was a bit of a shame. I'm turning the sod for the very first LGBTI aged care centre out in Balan. So that's really important. And again, in the other intersections is LGBTI people with disabilities. You probably can't read the name of the presentation there, but Jared's doing a presentation called "What We Really Do in Disabled Toilets." It was an absolute clanger, but it's about how do we provide space and place. And for the disability sector that I invited to this forum, they said, "Well, we don't even talk about sexuality, let alone homosexuality. You're blowing the lid off this stuff, and this is really, really, really important." We've mentioned the footy. Life is about coming out all the time. I had to come out to the AFL that I'd never been to a football game before. And they said, "You live in Melbourne, are you mad?" I said, "Look, it's never been a place that I felt welcome. Maybe it wasn't, maybe it was, I don't know, I just never felt like that was a safe place to be or anything that I was interested in. But we are having a game in this religion on August 13th. See you all at Etihad Stadium between St Kilda and the Swans, and they've received a lot of negativity already around that. So it's going to be interesting how that works out. I think it's leadership. I think this Andrews government and Daniel himself has been incredibly supportive, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Sorry, love Dan Andrews.
Yeah. I think I'm in the good books with him. His biggest Facebook hit was when he marched with me at Pride. It's like, so far all good. But, this slide is important too. A lot of places I go, people say, we should be treating people equally. Well, we know people aren't equal. We know that, we need to be working actively for minority groups, and that's really important. I had a man say to me today, why are you bringing all this, sexuality stuff into the workplace? Why is that really important? The sexuality doesn't belong in the workplace. And I said to him, okay, do you have a picture of your family on your desk? He said, yes. I said, do you talk in the lounge room and coffee room about what you did on the weekend with your family? He said, yes. I said, do I need to keep talking? He said, yes. He said, I didn't get it. But, I challenge anybody to spend 5 minutes having a conversation about what you did on the weekend without using any pronouns. I won't make you do it now because I'm time limited, but I do for some groups, and they do find it incredibly difficult. And if you're using that headspace to try and lie your whole life as a Supreme Court judge or as anybody in the workforce, that time and effort you could be spending on thinking about how you're going to line up your day, what outcomes you're going to get. It's incredible what LGBTI people sort of, have to do in the workplace just to get by. That's a picture of me and Chris Eccles. If you're on Twitter, I'm sure you all are, because you're such a hip group. I'm just learning how to use social media. So far, haven't got myself in too much trouble. Chris Eccles is the Secretary of the Department of Premier and Cabinet where I work, and that's him at our Christmas event. I think it's about leadership in this space, and when there's people like that, and people like Daniel Andrews, the Minister, and others, we've come a long way. We still have a long way in Victoria. Tim Wilson used to remind me that, he said, Victoria is a bubble. Victoria is not Queensland. But I think, we have to be the shining light in Victoria because, some of the other states are so far behind us. So thank you.